Resident Evil. Such a fucking good franchise. I don't know why I took such a long break from it, but I'm glad I'm back to it. And Resident Evil 4 Remake's been fucking awesome, although I have had to put it on the lowest settings possible because I'm still rocking the 10 series card. But all the same, it's been pretty fucking awesome, and the reception's been pretty positive, save for a few choice motherfuckers, but we'll get into them later. But the most surprising addition to those choice motherfuckers was Crowbcat of all people, making his little comparison video that no shit put me to sleep because it was just so fucking boring. And part of that's because he intentionally edited the footage that way to make the remake look worse. Which is pretty slimy, especially considering Crowbcat's pretty well respected for using his footage to compare things or to show how worse things are in the new age. But we're not here to talk about Crowbcat specifically, instead we're here to talk about his little simp here, otherwise known as the synthetic Manlet. Now if you've been around on YouTube, you already know him, you already know his god-awful takes. So I'm not going to bore you to death with a history lesson, instead we're just going to jump right into his little defense of it because any defense of this video is fucking awful.
So finally, cancel culture comes for Crowbcat.
5 seconds. 5 seconds in and we're already dealing with some outright lies. This is not cancel culture whatsoever. I feel like these days no one really knows what cancel culture is anymore, because it's used so much just over basic ass disagreements. Or hell, just the other week I had one guy say I was trying to cancel people who literally have nothing to cancel. All because I dared to make videos on them. But as far as this, no one's combing through Crowbcat's history to try and find other things to cancel him over. But of course a disingenuous fuck like Synthetic Manlet here would, of course, frame it that way. Whatever you gotta do to get the Redditors on your side.
Okay, not really. He just gave a controversial opinion for quite possibly the first time in his channel's history.
If talking about Crowbcat, that's really not the case. This is not his first time getting into some kind of controversy and such like that, or at least giving a controversial opinion. But by and large, he just mostly parrots the popular sentiment on a game and uses his little comparison game for it. And let's take a look through his little catalog here. You got his Cyberpunk video, compares all the clips that was at release to all the hype and all that. You know, pretty fair comparison. Left 4 Dead and Back 4 Blood shows all the examples of how they tried to do something to make Left 4 Dead stand out and such, and how Back 4 Blood just completely missed the mark. That and his little thing of the credits at the end of how there's like 5 names that overlap between the two games, yet they kept saying, oh, from the creators of Left 4 Dead, all over the marketing. Halo, same deal pretty much. You know, it could go on and on, but I think the only time he really got into any kind of major disagreement with people would be maybe at the launch of the Switch and maybe his Grand Theft Auto 4 and 5 comparison, where he either started or at the very least popularized the notion that GTA 4 is better just because of these minor things like the way cars crumple or the fact that you can do parkour. I mostly agree with that sentiment, but at the same time I understand why a lot of the things were taken out of Grand Theft Auto 5. So yeah, I wouldn't exactly say Crowbcat's that controversial.
As you know, I'm no stranger to controversy, so I figured I might as well throw my 2 cents in. Now, on principle, I'm going to defend any real opinion I see on the internet, whether or not I agree with it, because I respect the courage just to disagree with whatever the current NPC hive mind believes in.
That's a horrible fucking stance to have. Obviously, it should be a case-by-case basis on whether or not you agree with someone, or at least respect their courage to disagree on something like that. But when they're blatantly wrong and having to lie about something, yeah, no, fuck that.
Now, I don't necessarily agree with certain points in this video, and the common critique that he's cherry-picking the worst elements of the remake is a fair criticism to make.
So literally the entire point of why people are criticizing him is a fair criticism. In other words, your entire defense is completely useless, since you agree with the main sentiment. So that's good to know that we're already wasting our time responding to this, but stupid takes are stupid takes, so...
Honestly, and you have to remember, I actually gave Remake a positive review. Yes, I like the original better for various reasons, but I still think it's a good game, and I wouldn't necessarily call it soulless. Maybe slight elements of it are soulless. And for those of you who don't know, Soul versus Soulless is a 4chan meme, so obviously he's catering to a certain demographic with his content.
Let's go ahead and give Crowbcat the benefit of the doubt and say that that's his intent. He's just using a meme, and he just happened to use it on this remake. He's still dead-ass wrong trying to say the remake is completely soulless like this, just because it dared to go in a more realistic approach. And if he really wanted to say that they were soulless on this remake, he could have just cherry-picked the dialogue changes and such that are different. Then maybe, just maybe he'd have some kind of an argument. But instead he decided to compare the lighting and the sound effects, in which all it comes off as him saying, new thing bad, old thing good. All in all, Crowbcat just comes off as someone with very, very thick nostalgia goggles on. And you explain it away with this little meme explaining old graphics good, new graphics bad and such. Yeah, that's really not helping the case.
And look, I realize you could say the same thing about my channel, but the reality is, my viewership reflects my content. Crowbcat's does not reflect 4chan in any way. He has over 1 million subs, a lot of his videos get in the multiple millions of views. He's clearly much more mainstream, even if he doesn't have a physical presence as a personality on YouTube. I guess the point of what I'm saying here is Crowbcat essentially did exactly what I've done multiple times in the past, which is tackle something that is beloved either from recency bias or just because it's legitimately a great game that caters to a certain audience, and criticize that thing with very little consideration to its mass popularity and the inevitable backlash.
And you left out your potential to make really, really retarded points. For example, with that Doom Eternal clip, I just can't help but think of the time you said that no one cares about how people fight against bots.
You have to understand, and this is to go back to my point about pseudo speedrunning and playing a game for no reason, that there is no way to prove to anybody how good you are at Doom Eternal, because Doom Eternal is essentially a single-player fighting game. The whole game is just spent fighting bots, and nobody cares how good you are at fighting bots.
What the actual fuck?
When that's exactly what you're going to be doing in Resident Evil, and apparently people really love that one, so... As for his God of War take, I didn't watch that one, I just know it elevated Zero Needs Coffee more than his shorts did. But yeah, the two of y'all really made some really fucking retarded points in this Resident Evil controversy. Crowbcat, he's better than his other ones, but even he has his goofs every now and then. You, on the other hand, are nothing but a goof.
And that's because I don't care about the backlash anymore. I've dealt with it for 3 years at this point, and so I can certainly respect that approach. Now, one thing I don't agree with is that he passive-aggressively changed the title to Resident Evil 4 Remake is a masterpiece, and many people clearly didn't get the joke.
I'd like to know what exactly the joke is, since him doing this literally the day after he made such a big fuss over his little title just comes across as him bending the knee, as he should. I mean, if I was him, I would have taken the whole video down and realized, yeah, I fucked up. But so be it. I mean, ad revenue is ad revenue, and you gotta make some kind of controversy. But do explain what exactly the joke is.
But it definitely looks like you're backpedaling, and he also rewrote the description, and in the original said that the purpose of the video was for you to come to your own conclusion while telling you it was soul versus soulless. So to some people it looks like he's giving in to criticism, and to other people it looks like he couldn't handle any criticism.
And of course we're not going to get an explanation on what the joke is. Why did I expect any less? Anywho, it doesn't really matter since Crowbcat's gone back to his original title of Soul versus Soulless. And we're just gonna have to wait and see how he handles his next video, if he's gonna use this same disingenuous approach. Hope not, because his comparisons are usually fair, but either way, I'm not really holding my breath, so... But it'll still be interesting to see what Crowbcat does after this. Now that he's had his fun and collected all of his rage bait views.
Not really a good look, by the way. Having said, I still analyze certain parts of this video and give it a fair critique. Obviously, it's 37 minutes long, so I'm not gonna just react to clips. We'll just briefly go over some of the points, and I do want to cover one specific YouTuber's reaction to this, which I thought was pretty pathetic. So without further ado, here's Resident Evil 4 Soul vs. Soulless comparison by Crowbcat.
I suppose since that's the approach he's going to take when it comes to his controversy, I should do the same thing. Because we all know Synthetic Man isn't going to make that many good points, and he's going to gloss over a lot of important context, since that's his only way to critique something. So prepare yourself for a lot of skipping, but all the same, hope you enjoy. If not, then now's your chance to tap out. Go watch one of my other videos. I don't know.
Now, believe it or not, I actually already have a problem with the first clip he used, and I think this is an issue with his video style in general. If something isn't immediately apparent how bad it is, then the audience probably won't be confused when they're actually critiquing. When he shows off the first encounter with Hanato, he compares the cutscene in the original game and the very short encounter afterward, just like Hanato that comes down the stairs in the remake. This is not a fair comparison, because the majority of what you're showing in the original game is a cutscene that is in the remake, and you didn't show it. You could have just sliced the two together. But I think what you're trying to critique here is that the very first Hanato you shoot shows you how the gameplay mechanics work, and then you resell them, reshoot them, you can call it attack, that sort of thing. Whereas in the remake, Hanato is killed in the cutscene, and the Blindness takes over him off screen, and so the first enemy you shoot is bullet resistant, which I agree is a legitimate criticism of the remake, one I had. But when there's no narration explaining what you're trying to critique, especially this is the very first clip in the video, people are already going to have a problem with it. Now, I think the next series of clips where he's showing side-by-sides of various shots from the game, just visual comparisons of lighting and some of the background ambiance. I'm actually a little 50-50 on it myself, but at least you can come to your own conclusion, ignoring, of course, the title, trying to tell you what to think, obviously.
Yeah, and like I said, this is the part of the video that bored me to sleep. I mean, it's one thing if you're gonna compare the action sequences, the fucking voice acting, blah to fucking blah, but when it comes down to lighting and ambience, that's, I can go either way on that one. Unless it's objectively worse, which the remake is not. So all in all, I'd say this entire section in Crowbcat's video is filler. And when the bulk of your video is nothing but filler, that really just doesn't help whatever point you're trying to make. But now we get into the real shit.
But he's allowed to have his opinion. I give my opinion of the game in the title all the time, and people try and call it clickbait.
Crazy idea, but maybe don't give your entire opinion in the title or the thumbnail, because then you're pretty much telling people, okay, there's his opinion, don't bother watching the video. Just a little food for thought there.
Now we get to the part of the video where our mystery YouTuber had a bitch fit on Twitter. G-Man Lives. He makes the claim that Crowbcat boosted the audio for the original game to make the ambient sounds louder. As someone who played the original just a few weeks ago, this is complete bullshit. And no, showing audio waveforms between the two clips does not prove that he dropped the audio levels for the remake footage.
You're right, that in itself doesn't prove it. You know what does, though? Him showing a scene in question on Twitter, which you of course glossed over. How shocking. I'm just going to throw it up on the screen now, showing that yes, there is a massive difference in the audio levels. So, cope harder. He lied.
And according to Crowbcat himself, he says he actually audio boosted the remake by multiple decibels. Whereas G-Man Lives provides a clip that we're supposed to believe on his word is unaltered. So if the ambient sound in the original is louder and much more noticeable like Crowbcat is claiming, you could easily compare how much louder a gunshot is in the original versus the remake compared to the ambient sound.
When did we start talking about the gunshot sounds? We're talking about the ambient sound effects that Crowbcat has been shown to be disingenuous on? Seriously, stick to the fucking topic at hand. Also, just to put the final nail in the coffin on this whole did Crowbcat alter the audio and such, I'm looking at my editor right now and there's a very thin line with barely any audio in his little section on that bridge in the remake. And yet when we look at G-Man's footage with the same sound effects, it's not that low. So clearly someone has done something to the audio. I wonder who. And why would G-Man have any reason to boost the audio like that just to defend this game? What is he gonna gain out of that? So yeah, case closed, Crowbcat altered the audio. Which isn't in the least bit surprising, since in one of Crowbcat's videos that I know very well, which is his GTA 4 and 5 comparison, he outright admitted in the description that he used mods in GTA 4 for certain parts. Admittedly, they were for very minor things like the parkour or something like that, but all the same, if you're gonna have to resort to using mods in order to use your comparison, then your comparison falls apart real fast. But that's a tangent for another time.
If you just play the same exact comparison, we can't tell what's been decibel boosted or suppressed. So this is literally just hearsay. You're supposed to trust whatever YouTuber you like more, I guess.
Or you could actually listen for the difference, because it's very noticeable once you figure it out. And then you figure out Crowbcat's full of shit. And G-Man, he's just trying to be fair and try and de-escalate the drama and such by saying, oh, maybe he's just using a different audio setup than me. I doubt it, but who knows?
I know in my personal anecdotal experience, the ambient sound is definitely more noticeable in the original. Either way, it's pretty pathetic. Out of all the points in this video, you want to just claim he lied about audio levels?
Considering most of the video is nothing but comparing the audio levels or the lighting and shit like that, it's pretty fair to call him out when you have proof of him deliberately altering the audio in order to make a point.
So this is just embarrassing Steven. It's like his late 30s or some shit. Talking like a zoomer on Twitter. Goddamn, dude. This is some serious secondhand cringe. I'm getting reading these tweets. I get back to the actual video. There is a slight problem I have with these comparisons, although I agree with the ambient sound issue. I think the visual downgrades or upgrades are going to be my case basis. The only consistently bad thing about the remake is just something bad about modern games in general, which is lighting and visual clarity. The filter room, or the water room, or the Ashley turns some cranks room, whatever you want to call it, definitely looks better in the original just because the lighting lets you see everything clearly. The colors aren't muted. It is pleasing to the eye.
You had a point going with the lighting and everything. It's definitely clearer to see in this one, but them colors being not muted, everything is some shade of brown or gray, so yeah, gonna have to disagree there, bud. Not exactly what I'd say pleasing to the eye, but less visual clutter, obviously.
The new one is trying too hard to have like this spooky-ish atmosphere when the game isn't scary in the least.
As far as this new one, yeah, I think this one looks better. Get rid of some of that brown and gray, and the main part about the lighting and everything, yeah, it's better lit in the original. But here's the thing, this is meant to be in a spooky castle where everything's all dark and your only light is from the candles and such. Meanwhile the other one, and this is mostly part of the color palette and such, but it looks like it's got fluorescent lighting going on. In this one it doesn't, and it looks more appropriate to the vibes they were going for, so not exactly helping your case there. Anywho, there's just this massive section of him describing Crowbcat's video and the comparisons between things in the gameplay and such like that, or cinematics with the monsters, the El Gigante, all that shit. And I more or less agree, or I just don't have anything that interesting to respond with, so I'm just gonna skip over that.
And then for the actual script, the dialogue writing, you already know I'm 100% on Crowbcat's side. The new one is so much more boring, with a few exceptions. I think Krauser was handled pretty well, but the majority of the iconic lines from the game were cut, or in a couple places were moved so that you could very easily ignore them, in the case of Salazar and Leon's final confrontation, bringing up the whole, oh, you're just an extra in my script.
I barely even noticed the differences in how they handled certain iconic lines and such like that, so they weren't really all that iconic, I guess, but at the same time, oh well. I more or less went in expecting them to pull some bullshit like that after the travesty they did in Resident Evil 3 Remake, with the whole, you want stars, I'll give you stars, in that fucking hallway chase scene.
Come on, you creepy-ass stalker! You want stars? I'll give you stars!
That is one big pile of shit.
Yeah, I'm never gonna forgive Capcom for that one. That is a bigger fuck up than what they did in Resident Evil 6. I don't care what anyone else says. Doing Jill dirty like that. I know I'm having a bit of a fanboy seethe moment, but it's justified because of how badly they did it in that game. Anyway, yeah, I more or less expected them to do some shit like that, and they surprisingly held off. Save for, again, shifting it from a cutscene to fucking in-gameplay dialogue. Which means it's good enough there, but you
could very easily ignore that because it's part of the gameplay. You can tune out the dialogue. When it's a radio conversation, you kind of have to focus on it. And again, you might argue it's better to put it in gameplay. In most cases, I would absolutely agree. But Resident Evil 4's cutscenes are very entertaining. That's the point.
So we've gone from talking about the radio cutscenes, talking about the regular cutscenes, talking about the in-gameplay dialogue. Pick one and say which one you'd rather it be in. You jumble in all these different words together, it's hard to find out what the fuck you actually want. And we got ourselves another massive skip coming up because he just says a whole lot of nothing in regards to the derogatory comments towards women and shit like that. That and him bringing up a really fair critique on Crowbcat's video on how stupid he fucking is in his little video, but I'm sure the commenters have pointed it out, and I'm sure those comments have been deleted because Crowbcat's also been deleting comments. Which I'm sure Synthetic Manlet's not going to touch at all. Nope. But anyway, skip.
But... and there's a huge fucking but, and this is a big part of why there's so much backlash to this Crowbcat video. Gameplay is king. Crowbcat doesn't talk about gameplay unless it directly affects certain background elements, like physics objects, right?
The day that this whole Crowbcat controversy started off, someone said it on Twitter the best. Let me pull it up real quick. Crowbcat has done for critical video game analysis what CinemaSins has done for critical movie analysis, and I fucking hate it. Absolute loser content. He's absolutely right, since all Crowbcat really focuses on is the impact of certain things, or the fucking sound effects. Blah de fucking blah, not the actual game itself. And this is a perfect example I'd use to hold up to that.
A lot of modern games remove physics, interactivity with objects in the background, especially as a gameplay element. They almost never have any relevance to gameplay, and instead use all this powerful hardware to just make games photorealistic, which is much less fun.
And yet these same motherfuckers that complain about this will never ever touch a Just Cause game, ever. Not even gonna get into a little fanboy rant about the lack of people covering Just Cause. One day I'll make a video on you, baby. But yeah, fake motherfuckers as usual.
An example I've seen a few times is that you can actually shoot and break through wooden doors in the original Resident Evil 4, and this actually is a gameplay mechanic, not one I use much. But if you shotgun blast a door off, that can help sometimes.
Short of skipping the door opening animation, I don't see any way in which this would be helpful to you. And the clips you're showing where you shoot through the door just to shoot at the enemy, well, the door's going to disintegrate no matter what, so at that point you're just wasting your ammo. So not really having this detail in the remake, I can see why.
In the remake, you can't destroy doors, so that does hurt the gameplay a little bit, a tiny bit.
No, it doesn't. In fact, it's just the game cutting out a bunch of fluff.
If I had seen more comparisons like that in this video, it would be a better video, because as it stands, it feels mostly like an opinion piece, and yes, I would say all game reviews are opinion pieces, but I mean, there was a certain almost objective quality to Crowbcat's older videos. They were used to display how a lot of modern games are objectively inferior to previous entries in the series, and this is kind of why I wish he had covered the Dead Space remake, not because I think it's bad, bad. I actually think the Dead Space remake's pretty good too, despite the woke elements they added that every shill reviewer pretends doesn't exist for some reason. Are they on EA's payroll at this point?
No, but I think the people rightfully calling you out on this is giving you permanent brain damage. Seriously, a gender-neutral bathroom sign in a fucking video game suddenly makes that same game woke? What? Especially with the added context of it being a spaceship where they'd have both genders on and they wouldn't want to waste resources on giving 2 separate bathrooms. Just shut the fuck up about this woke shit already. And once again, there's just going to be a massive skip because he just goes on and on about why Crowbcat's video is fucked from the word go. You can watch it if you really need someone to explain the obvious to you, but there you go. On to the last slog of this video.
So I think we're starting to reach the limitations of Crowbcat's style of critique here.
It's less that he's reached the limitations and more the fact that he's just picking the wrong target. Like, yeah, criticize the remake all you want, but at least bring some valid criticism instead of bringing up how the lighting was different in the original or how there are all these different meaningless changes. Because then you just look like a nitpicking bitch, which is what Crowbcat is. So, again, you should have expected it, but at the same time, he deserves it for all the disingenuous bullshit he's pulled on this one.
Now again, I still kind of enjoyed the video as someone who likes the original more. I don't think it's a bad video. There's a reason why I titled this In Defense of Crowbcat, but it certainly could be a better video. I don't know if he'll ever see this. If he does, I hope you take some of these criticisms to heart and try not to listen to people like G-Man Lives, who is an obvious shill and a proud shill he displays on his Twitter.
Oh god, we can't have in-jokes in our Twitter bios anymore. Otherwise, Synthetic Man is going to take it completely literally, because he's that fucking retarded.
Which would be funny if it wasn't true. We unfortunately now live in an era of toxic positivity, which is essentially just a way for corporations to get you to buy their products. If they make a 7 out of 10 game, we have to all pretend it's a masterpiece for the rest of time until we inevitably forget about it in a month, and then you buy the next 7 out of 10 that everyone has to call a masterpiece. When you begin to understand that it is all a cycle of shilling above average products, not bad products, objectively bad products get shit on. Just look at that Velma show. It got shit on by basically every personality on the internet, which if you ask me is fucking boring, which is exactly why I didn't make a video on it. No, what's actually interesting is critiquing good games. And unfortunately, Crowbcat figured out firsthand, you're not allowed to critique good games. We have to pretend that they're all amazing and flawless.
Literally no one cares that you critique a good game. They only care that you do a good job of it. For example, everybody that played it really loved Elden Ring, except for one certain person, but we're not going to talk about him, because he's an example of how not to critique a good game. You know who did make a good critique of the game? Enclave Emily, where she brought up the flaws of the game and how it could have done things better, all while still saying that the game is really solid, instead of claiming it's soulless just because it has a different take on the art style and the cinematography and all that bullshit. But anywho, that's where I'm going to leave the video at, because he just goes on and on about how Crowbcat didn't do a good job in that video, but he's still going to shill for him. Anywho, I just felt like covering this because it's Synthetic Man, you know it's going to be fucking awful, and it was. Although it was more the boring kind of awful this one, but I did what I could to pick the most interesting pieces of shit out of the pile. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this, and I've been enjoying Resident Evil a lot, so maybe there's going to be a few more Resident Evil videos coming up. I don't know, the only things I know for sure is I'm definitely doing that Halo Infinite review I said I was going to do, and I'm also canceling the Harmon Smith video I was going to do because I just lost interest in it entirely, and I still need to get the last bit of Ackman done. I just need to re-record my audio for it because my audio was peaking, and I add that to the list, but I wanted to do this one first, so yippee there. Anywho, if all that tickles your fancy, then sub and like and all that bullshit that YouTubers love to beg you to do. I don't like saying that shit often at the end of my videos because I just think I should earn it more, but yeah, there's what you should do. And until next time, I'll talk to y'all later.